Welcome, hello, welcome. We're so glad you're here. As you can see, we have something very special today. These are special ladies, and you're special out there as well. We have all of our Inspire hosts here in the studio. We're going to have great fun. It's our season review show, so stay with us. Inspire is sponsored by Kansas Furniture Mart, using furniture to inspire conversation, and by the Blanche Bryden Foundation. Hello and welcome to Inspire. Ladies, ladies, everybody watching, we're so glad to be here. This is our last episode of the first season of Inspire. And we have come such a long way and we've loved every single minute of it. So we're getting together for this show because we're going to kind of relive a few things. And maybe if you missed something, you might go back and check out that show at KTWU. So we're about to dive right in. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Danielle?
Yes.
Let's go to you first. Oh, but before we do that, how about Amy, Danielle, Betty Lou, Leslie, and let's see, we have a professor over here named Amber. So, you're right there too. So here we go. What was your most impactful show of the first season of Inspire?
I'm going to say Charlie Tebow.
Yes.
Absolutely loved them, and just the story that they told about being, in the sex industry and being sold as a slave, and it just hit too close to home for me in terms of being in Western Kansas, and she was looking for love and esteem, and she got into it through her boyfriend, and then that ended up being a whole thing. But now they're out and married and working to make sure that other people don't get involved in the sex industry. So very impactful.
And I remember, Leslie, you asked a question during that, exactly what is human trafficking? So let's take a look. In case you don't know exactly what human trafficking is, here's the description.
What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so the federal definition is force, fraud, or coercion, any act or service. So for me, what it looked like was I was taken to a group of people, forced to provide sexual services and for a payment. And so just those three combined makes it human trafficking in my experience. And then, of course, there were more issues that occurred. It looks like prostitution. It looks like pornography. It exists in service industries with labor trafficking. There's trafficking that occurs in the Western Kansas areas where there's a lot of feedlots and restaurants. That's kind of a roundabout way of saying it's modern day slavery.
If I may ask,
I tell you, they impacted us all. And if you haven't seen that, again, go back to ktwu.org and take a look at it, because you're going to learn a lot. And I think one of the things that impressed me by what Charlie said was that if there would have been a person in their life that cared about them, that listened to them, that guided them, and they have a good relationship with their dad now, and the dad has even said, I wish I'd have visited with you longer, I wish we'd have talked about it longer. And getting the parents involved is just so impactful. Okay, so Leslie, I think I know the answer to this one, and several of us really like it. What was your favorite topic?
Well, I love the whole hemp versus cannabis discussion, right? And the fact that medical marijuana actually heals as opposed to masks your illnesses, right? And so here we are, people are being prescribed opioids, which does nothing to help you. It just masks the pain, plus you get addicted, plus you end up dying because you get addicted. when we could have been using medical marijuana all along, and we still don't have the ability to make that available to the citizens right here in Kansas. Missouri has it, Nebraska has it, Texas has it,
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma has it.
Right.
We don't have it. And I think that is wrong. And I don't think our lawmakers really get it. And I think we need to do more to help educate people about it. And I did go back and watch Reefer Madness. That was cray-cray. It is my new favorite movie. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, $2.99.
And for those who haven't
Shameless
heard,
plug here.
yeah, for those who haven't heard of Reefer Madness, will you give us a synopsis?
Sure. So when we had the show that day, they mentioned that there was a whole propaganda going on in the United States that to stop people from wanting to use marijuana. And they did that by producing this movie called Reefer Madness back in 1936. And so that really set up the whole thought about marijuana being a violent, horrible, terrible thing that people should not do, and you should make sure that your children don't do it. It starts off in a school classroom. I mean, the whole thing's just amazing. You really need to watch it and see how propaganda was done back in those days. And somehow it's scarily close to what's going on
I was
today.
just about to say, I bet the
Absolutely.
mirror up to today's society is not that far off.
It's not that far off.
In that same show, we talked about hemp, and off camera, Amy, you told us a lot about how hemp can cure the world.
Now, hemp is an incredible product. It's a plant that can be used so many different ways. I mean, and because it is a plant, we can grow it, unlike like petroleum or something where we'd have to dig that out from the ground. And it can be used, 25,000 different products can come from hemp. One of them is also marijuana, which it reaches at a different point during the gestation period of the plant. But before you get there, it's a fantastic product, and it's a shame that we can't harness it more. And they're trying to. In order to grow hemp, you have to have all these different regulations to make sure that it's the chemical stays a hemp and doesn't become marijuana, because if it gets contaminated, you've lost the whole crop, and you can't burn it at that point.
I would love to know
Right.
how many regulations are in place for hemp growing versus how many regulations are in place to make opioids.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I bet hemp has more.
A little bit, probably.
Right.
And I think
probably.
the other thing that was amazing about it is, right, so hemp, and correct me if I'm wrong, hemp could be used in the farming industry to help with growing our crops, right? And so I think we are doing some of that, but we could be doing more. And I think that has an impact on climate change as well,
Right.
is what I remember
Less
hearing.
of a carbon imprint.
Yes.
Yeah, footprint.
Yeah. So let's do another show on medical marijuana and cannabis.
And that made me think of what you were talking about. We actually had a concierge.
Yes.
Our guest talked about that.
Yes, I'm so excited to get with her as soon as we can, as soon as it becomes legal in Kansas, because you just don't want anybody behind the counter like, girl, I got something for you. No, I need you to have a medical background to be able to prescribe different things to help me. Because what was it? She'd been in 3 car wrecks within a short period of time, and she ended up basically healing herself with hemp products. And so why wouldn't we take advantage of that? And I did a 180 because I was coming in as Miss Pentecostal, like, I don't think I could be talking about hemp and we're all going to hell. And it's like, no, it is not what I thought it was. And I could have been on Reefer Madness, I guess, the first part of the show. But by the time we did all the conversation, I'm like the first one trying to be in line. Please sign me up for some hemp. I'm all about it.
Perhaps our state leaders need to watch this episode of Inspire so that they can understand there's nothing to be afraid of.
Exactly.
I
Just don't
think
be
that's
afraid
a
of
big
it.
part of it is tackling that taboo, right? Is this idea that we have this preconceived notion about the kind of people that use these products,
Exactly.
And in reality, that's not the case at all. And I think you really, you hit on something in particular with these opioid deaths. I've personally experienced this in my life, and I think, man, we could have saved so many people had this been something that was readily available. And it all goes back to that taboo and misunderstanding what these products are.
And you know, speaking of opioids and deaths, so another one of the shows that was interesting, I thought, was the Caregivers Show.
Oh, yeah.
And thinking about, you know, what it's like when you actually go through hospice and palliative care and all of that. And that, if that didn't tug your heartstrings, I don't know what could have. I mean, that was a really meaningful show. And I think so many of us have experienced loss, and hospice has become a really important part of our lifestyle as Americans these days. It was not something that people thought about many, many years ago, but now, you know, when it gets to be that time, it is really the humane thing to do, the beautiful thing to do for someone as they're getting ready to leave.
You know, and we have a little bit of that show actually telling, because I think the question was, how do you know when to seek help? And our wonderful guests gave us some guidelines of what you need to do, what's going on with the person to help them and help you know when it's time to seek help. At Midland Care, when someone needs you, you know, how does somebody know that they need you?
I always say if things are just getting more difficult from day to day and you're finding yourself feeling, I think, more of a toll on your own health, try not to let it get that far. But if you're finding from day to day that an individual you're caring for is just needing more of your energy, your time, your attention, then it's time to call for help.
Okay.
I say kind of the same thing, a similar thing. I say when the bad days outnumber the good days. That's kind of a good sign for when caregivers need to get more help. I also believe in, you know, having those conversations with your loved one. If your loved one has like dementia and you notice that they're forgetting more, then that's kind of a good sign that they're forgetting more. Maybe we need to really start looking at more care in the home or a higher level of care outside of the home.
I tell you, like they said, when the bad days outnumber the good days, that's a wonderful way to tell what needs to go on next in your family and for your loved one. And Danielle, when I found out about you, I knew that your grandmother had raised you, but then you actually became the caregiver.
Absolutely, and that was an interesting transition, to say the least. So I certainly related to a lot of what was talked about in that particular episode, and then making sure that the people who are doing the caregiving get attention as well, because it's not just about the person you're caring for, it's also about the person who's actually caregiving. And so it was a really great way to just have some of those thoughts that I had about it put out there, and hopefully brought attention to it for such a pivotal time, because we're going to be seeing that more and more. The baby boomers are getting even older, and so we need to be prepared for those things to happen even more so. You know, and as passionate as I am about caregiving, Amber, I know that you were totally passionate about women and voting. That show that we did, you were on fire, girl. Talk about that.
Well, I think one of the beautiful things about living in America is that we have the opportunity to voice what we want and what we need. And I think when we watch what these individual states are doing that's taking people's voice away from them is disgusting, and it's really tearing down what we truly value in this country. And I think in particular it's hurting marginalized portions of our population that need their voice heard more than anyone else, because if you don't have these people that have the opportunity to vote for what they want and need, then they're going to continue to be oppressed just like they always have been, or opportunities that they might look forward to or need in their life aren't going to be there for them because they don't get to vote for the people that are looking out for them. And I think you know, a particular portion of the population that really needs to protect their right to vote, in addition to the minority population, is women, because if women do not have the opportunity to voice their opinion, they're going to lose out on opportunities, they're going to lose out on their place in society that they've worked so hard to get. right? And it makes me think of the discussion in the women in the military. And so I want to toss this over to you because I know that you were really excited about that segment.
And that is exactly, you said it exactly right, that they lose their voice and they're there and they're talking and they're screaming and they're active, but they can't be heard, which is exactly what happened to women in the military. We had a history professor from Washburn and we had a lieutenant colonel who retired, and how they had women back in the American Revolution were active participants in there, and then took on more male-like roles through many different conflicts, through the War of 1812 and the Spanish-American War and the Civil War, and it continued on. And it wasn't until World War II, when they started getting some recognition. Harriet Tubman, we had a great conversation about Harriet Tubman and what she did for the military, and she got a widow's pension because they would not acknowledge the role that she played. And we're still fighting this. I mean, it's unreal. And I think that the military and the voting thing they go absolutely hand in hand.
And we were asking more women, I think you even said that, and asking more women, write down your stories. Ask, if it's not your story, ask your mother, your grandmother, your aunt. Ask somebody what their story was in the military, because it needs to be told, it needs to be revered. That person needs to be revered.
And about the women who were left behind, raising the families, because their stories are just as important too. Having to raise the kid, and in some cases the husband did come back, in some cases the husband didn't come back, and then it's a whole new role for them within the family, and some of the sacrifices that they had to make in terms of trying to keeping their family, solid, and what they had to do in terms of work in a very sexist society. So I mean, there's a lot of stories that I wish that I really would have listened to with my grandmother and my great-grandmother, that, it's just like, oh, it's just old people talking. No, it's our history. And I wish that I had actually picked up on that and learned more about it.
Or even those women whose husbands did come back and now they're dealing with a husband who is not the same husband that went to war.
Right.
And how do they now caregive that into that individual while they're raising their family? So I just think that these stories and the amount of credit that we don't give women for their role in these things is astonishing.
Women are strong.
Women are strong. And I think what's really upsetting too about women in the military is the percentage of women in the military is so low, and it could be so much higher. And why? Because they don't feel like they belong. They haven't been welcomed in.
And it's not a safe place for them in some instances.
And it's not a safe place.
I will say this, we had a great clip, and we will show you that clip in just a second. There was a great clip when I asked the lieutenant colonel, how do you address a young woman who's interested in the military, dealing with knowing that there's a lot of sexual discrimination, sexual harassment, sexual assault. How do you encourage them to go into that field? And she had the best response.
And I'll be very honest, the military isn't for everyone, male or female. I would have to say that it's just like any other corporation or business. You have good people and you have bad people, and you have good systems and bad systems. The military has those systems in place for reporting, whether it's sexual harassment, equal opportunity, you name it. But just like a corporation, it's dependent on the people. And so if you don't have a good person in that position to facilitate growth and reporting and correction and justice, then it won't happen. So you have to really, really want to do it.
Some people follow the rules, some people don't follow the rules. So in that regard, it really is no different than being in
corporate
any
America.
workforce, in corporate America.
And that was another show that I thought was a really good show, was our Women in the Workplace. We had an opportunity to actually see two forms that I think in 20 years ago we wouldn't have had, which was a female entrepreneur and a female executive senior vice president in corporate America. I mean, how fabulous was that? Seeing the growth of what's going on in America in terms of women getting ahead with regard to business. So the military is one place, corporate America and business another. But I totally was inspired by both of those shows.
And I think one of the funniest parts about that was when Michelle Cuevas Stubblefield was trying to tell us, we were trying to equate how the Mad Men mentality, the program, the Mad Men mentality, and she so eloquently shared her thought. I need to just go right quick, if I may, Michelle. Coming from the advertising field, as long as you and I were in it, it's like kind of not that far removed from the Mad Men days.
No, it's not.
Okay. Will you elaborate on that a bit?
You know, when I first got into the industry, they said, you know, if you want to make your way into the industry, look at the obituaries, because people stayed in those positions for a long time. And a lot of the time it was Mad Men, so, you know, leadership was CEOs or men in general. And, you know, that type of position, especially in advertising, is kind of very ego-oriented, it's creative, very gregarious, and all those things that you might envision. So a woman who would come in can't necessarily, I would say, if they came in that way, they would probably be termed, you know, and framed a little differently than them just being a confident man. So a woman comes in, they're not probably going to be deemed as confident. However,
What a delicate way to put that.
most know me that that's probably, you know, probably not the way I would have framed it. Yeah.
I just remember us cracking up when she said that. I mean, how funny is that? And we all know how it is. You know?
We absolutely cannot go any further until we talk about menopause.
She got it in
Yeah,
there.
that was one of our favorites. And I think what I appreciated about it so much is that we are sort of taught as women that there are certain things that we should not discuss, and menopause is one of them. And I think that's ridiculous because it's something that happens to every single woman, and it's something that we've got to talk about and prepare for, and especially embracing this idea that your life doesn't end, which is sort of somehow what we've come to think about menopause as the end to our womanhood. And that's just ridiculous. And I loved having these women telling us not only that that's not correct, but then giving women the tools to take control of their sex life or take control of their health. And I think that's just something that we should get more comfortable talking about.
We spend a lot of time talking about puberty and young girls, you know, starting their period and what that's like, and their change of the body. And there's books and classes and a tremendous amount of support for that. But there's nothing that is the comparable on the other end. And granted, the menopause experience differs from person to person. I mean, it is as unique as a fingerprint. But at the same time, there's some commonalities around it, and it's very helpful when we share these conversations. So some people can say, "Oh my gosh, I had the same thing. Well, this is something I did, or this is something that helped me." Or are you also getting so angry when your kid knocked over something stupid and you just went off the rails for that? And you're like, "Oh my goodness, this is completely out of proportion. What is going on with me?" And yes, and everybody's like, yes, I had that too. Okay.
Actually, I can't relate, but go ahead.
Speaking about couldn't relate, was that hysterical when we did that show on childbearing?
Yeah, so maybe we should throw to a clip of that, because that was really interesting too, with the three ladies who have never had kids talking about maternity and the early years. It's like, yeah, we got nothing for y'all. I'm sorry.
And nannies. How do you hire a nanny?
Let's take a look at that. Thank you, Janet Thompson Jackson, for those helpful tips to keep us moving. And ladies, pregnancy seems to be something none of us know about, but through our guests, we're learning about it.
You know, you got to find a proper provider who has, you know, good education and you feel safe leaving your baby with. And it would be hard for me to walk away from my baby.
Trust somebody with it.
Exactly.
I'm sure there's a lot of you out there going, "Oh, those women have no idea." And we don't.
That was crazy. I mean, what do we know, girls? We are clueless about children. But that reminds me of when you did the other show and you had a bit of a blooper that nobody knew but you.
Okay, it wasn't a blooper. It's just my inner earpiece fell out. So Marcy Penner is talking by Zoom, and I can't hear a thing she said, and my inner earpiece is like continually moving down, and I'm like trying to move with it and still be on looking cute on the screen. And literally, it was not working at all. But I just played it off like everything was perfect. So yeah, that was my particular, how would you say it, piece of TV history. That's exactly what I'm going to say. Thank you. Needless to say, ladies, we could go on forever about some of our favorite shows, but Inspire also included segments featuring some powerful women in our community. And I want to start out by saying I love Barbara Waterman Peters. What an amazing, amazing artist.
Yes.
And she is just as amazing as her artwork is. So I'm glad that she was featured in one of the segments right here on Inspire, because maybe not everybody knows who she is. And so now she's got some spotlight to show off her work. And I know that you love her as much as I do.
I did. And what I was really inspired by, truly I was how she has spent her whole life doing various other things so that she could still remain what was true to her heart, her passion of, doing art. And I was blown away by that. She said, I knew from such a young age that this is what I wanted to do. And she's still doing it to this day, inspiring other people to come on along and be part of the next generation of Topeka artists.
And I love the shots that she showed about the national parks and so forth. And so we have our own girls who love parks, who love the outdoors, Dirty Girl Adventures.
I thought that was so fun, in particular right now when we're all trying to find things where we feel comfortable doing things not in big crowded places. I thought it was super timely and amazing to see these opportunities to get out in nature and be with your girlfriends or meet new girlfriends and have these adventures. There's this idea that the best thing for your mental health is to get out in nature, and this is such a great way to see another opportunity, because not everybody just wants to go jump into the woods. And so this was such a good way to sort of like ease into that. What was your favorite?
Oh, I have to say I love the Habitat for Humanity. I love that. As women, often we feel ill-equipped to handle some of the basic maintenance in our home. And our house is an asset, and you should care for it. Maybe you won't actually perform those duties that they show, but at least you know what it entails. What is the P-trap underneath the sink that needs to be cleared? How do you fix, sheetrock when there's a hole in it? How do you do those things? Inspiring and empowering.
Yes. We totally had that problem. We had a dog that chewed through one of our walls. So that Habitat for Humanity segment was right on for us.
And when you're finished with that, you need to meditate with Janet Thompson Jackson, and you need to have some moments of Zen with Sarah Starr. And we hope we've provided some of that for you guys watching, and we hope you'll join us in the next season. So on behalf of all of us, here we go. Let's go reverse order. We've got Amber this time. We have Leslie. We have me, Betty Lou. Of course, we have Danielle, and we have Amy, and we have you. And thank you so much for watching. Keep being inspired. Inspire is sponsored by Kansas Furniture Mart, using furniture to inspire conversation, and by the Blanche Bryden Foundation.